5:30. Hopefully things are working on Facebook and on YouTube. So once you're logged in, let me know that you can see me and let me know that you can hear me. There they are coming. Excellent. Let me know how it looks. Let me know if you're on Facebook or YouTube, where you're viewing from, that you can see me, you can hear me. Sandy says hi. Excellent. Everything's going well so far. I see people on YouTube. I see people on Facebook. This is a good sign. Technology is back in my favor. I am enjoying this so much better now that it works. Awesome. All right. This is you won't get these every week because registration closes on the 15th, but I will be able to remind you this week and next week that for January term at FDSA, I'm teaching a running A-frame class. It's new this term, so we're seeing how it goes. Teaching running A-frames in the winter. For the most part, we don't actually need an A-frame until around week 5. So you can get away with a small space for the flat work and stuff. So if you are interested in joining us, there are a few more spots still, I think, at the silver level where you can ask questions and post a couple of videos for me to see, and then bronze is unlimited. So if you're interested in my running A-frame program, you should go grab that, and I would be so grateful. Also, if you are already in that class, thank you for being there, and I'm always open to your input on how it goes. So throughout class, if you have some input for me, or at the end of class, there's always a survey. I would love to hear from you. And if you're already in there at bronze, if there is like a question you are dying to ask, there's still time to sign up for silver as room is available. So you can always upgrade your status if you are just dying to ask those questions. Okay, so that's all I got right now. I have some workshops in the development stage for like January, February, I think. But I'll wait a few more weeks to talk about those. Trying to not overwhelm my winter brain. Okay, so tonight we're talking about what do we do when things go wrong. I looked down and I had the wrong notebook in front of me, and I was going to start talking about what we're doing this week at running A-frame class. So we're talking about dealing with errors. And I think I have sort of had this live before, or we've touched on it. So go back in the group and search for like handling errors or dealing with errors, something like that. And you might get a lot of good stuff, especially it was probably a while ago, right? We've been at this for a while. We've been doing these lives for a long time now. So, but you can go back in the group and search for things that I might have posted, or if I've already done a live on a certain topic. I don't mind re-talking about topics because I know I won't say the exact same thing. And it's very real that I might have changed my mind on something by now, just because that's kind of the nature of the beast. Is that the science is always evolving, and I'm always observing something new, or if I work with a different team that I've uncovered something different that I would do, I might now change how I go about it with all dogs based on my experience with this one dog, that kind of pushed me to look at it in a different way and kind of unpack things differently. So I don't mind readdressing some topics. So that being said too, keep throwing ideas at me for these live chats so that even if it's something I've done before, we can bring it back. We can relive it again. So anyways, what do we do when things go wrong? I first want to say that I don't know if like that's the way we should be thinking about it. I kind of look at it as this is what I expect versus this is what I got. So it's really, I agree, Elise. The running A-frame class, enormous diversity in the breeds, like Corgi and Pumi and Chromie and Quaker and Great Dane and Golden Retriever. There's only 2 Border Collies in the whole class, I think, which is like my teeter class was basically all Border Collies. So it's completely different. And my weave pole class was like 50-50, like 50% Border Collies and then 50% other things. Did I say there's a Pumi? Anyways, huge amount of different dogs in the running A-frame class. So there is something for everyone in there. I say Chromie. There's so many breeds. Anyways. So I like to think of it as expected response and unexpected responses, because I don't think well, that was wrong. It puts us in a mindset that can lead us to a yucky place. So especially if we are crossover trainers, or we used to react to wrong behaviors in a really harsh or negative way, or even if we're just trying to retrain ourselves, like maybe we weren't necessarily mad when an error occurred, but we would let out that that big sigh. I think it's easier to react in a more positive light if it's just an unexpected response. So it's like a surprise. Oh, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. So here's a cookie anyways, right? So that's like thing 1, is try to reframe it in expected behaviors and unexpected behaviors. And I think this helps because if the mistake doesn't surprise you, your session was set up wrong. I'm going to say that again. If the mistake that your dog made did not surprise you, your session structure, the question you asked, the way you set that dog up was wrong. You made the mistake of asking that question. Because that's my second point, is that it's not the learner's job to plan the training session. It is the teacher's job to set up the training session to be as successful as possible. And this does come a little bit based on your training philosophy, but I don't believe that the dog needs to do the wrong thing to learn what the right thing is. So it's not that errors never happen in my training sessions. I can show you some, probably every day, there's going to be some little error that happens, but I'm not using that as a way to move my dog forward. I'm not banking on it, and I'm certainly not setting it up to happen on purpose. Okay? The trainer I used to be might have, and that's kind of where we looked at like the old style of proofing, where we set the dog up to trick them. Okay, that's leveraging their learning on a correction. Okay, and I don't think of training that way and setting up training that way. Now, if an unexpected response happens, am I always throwing a cookie at it anyways? No, I will absolutely withhold reinforcement, but that's like such a small detail in the overall big scheme of things. Okay, so we'll get there, I promise. Okay, but just remember that it's your job to set up the situation where the learner knows the answers. And if the learner doesn't know the answer, you have to split that into smaller approximations so that the learner can access the answer. Okay, so our goal is really high success rates. And I think we know that. But there's always going to be that chance that we get an unexpected response, either because, especially in agility, and we're going to talk about like obstacle training versus handling and sequencing and coursework and competing and things like that. But especially in agility, where our handling is involved, we might think that we gave the cue to take the left end of the tunnel, but the dog is pretty sure you meant the right end of the tunnel. So sometimes the unexpected response is to a cue you thought you gave, right? Because of everything we talked about last week, sometimes the dog is perceiving something that we don't even know that they're cueing off of. So we have to assume that the dog thought they were right for a reason. Okay, and that goes for anything. So last week I touched on it briefly about the question should be, why do you think that's correct? Okay, so that's kind of the first go-to, is when I start to see an unexpected response. The question in my head is, why does he think that that's what I wanted? And if I can process that within the training session, I'll try to keep going, and I'll ask a slightly different series of questions to try and determine why he thought that was correct. Must be some Colorado peep. On my comments, it doesn't tell me the names of the Facebook users having comments, but here's my Colorado swag. I miss Colorado. I hope I get to come to Colorado next year. Miss s'mores and everything yummy that I get in Colorado. Anyways, I don't even know what I was saying anymore because I miss my Colorado peeps. I'll get there, I promise. So I'll try to reroute this series of questions and try to figure out why the dog thought that they were correct. If I can't do that on the fly, I'm just going to re-ask that same question and see where did they just miss it? Maybe they just missed it. Maybe they weren't 100% finished resetting. Maybe I started to give the cue while they were still swallowing, chewing, and looking back up, right? Resetting from the last repetition. Maybe they just missed it. Maybe they just made a mistake. So if I just re-ask the exact same question, same context, then they get it right? They give the expected response. It's no big deal. And just carry on. But if they don't, if they give the unexpected response again, I can't pivot, I need to stop. I need to stop that training session and rethink kind of everything about that bit. Okay? Because if I continue to ask a question that the learner doesn't know the answer to, frustration is going to build up. On your end, on their end, they're going to start to guess, maybe. Like you've got a couple of options depending on your dog's temperament. They're going to start to guess. So they're going to frantically offer behavior at you. Is it this? And then if they happen to land on the expected response, and you mark and try to reward that, I get so distracted by noise around me. They have no idea what was the correct response. So you've got those dogs that just start guessing and throwing behaviors at you. You've got the dogs that are like, I don't know the answer. I don't know what, so I'm just going to give up and do some sniffing, right? I'm going to just quit. Bye. And then you also have those dogs that they don't offer behavior, but they still quit, but they ramp up when they quit. So they're spinning, barking, biting, things like that. So you've got you've got this range of behaviors that you don't want to go there. Because remember, when you are teaching them a skill, you're also teaching them how they feel about that skill, about training with you, about their reinforcers, right? Like, so if every time I go to train weave poles, I use chicken, and that's the only thing I ever use. And when I go and get the chicken, and then I go to train weave poles, and then weave pole training is just kind of a crummy time because there's a whole lot of failure and not a lot of help, and the dog doesn't know the answers. Pretty soon, just the smell of chicken is going to be, I don't like this game. So you really stand the risk of kind of letting those frustration behaviors seep into all sorts of areas of your relationship and training relationship with the dog. I'm going to grab this question. I think you said this before, but percentage-wise, you plan your training so they are successful 90% of the time. I mean, so it's a good question. My goal would be that they're 100% successful because I'm not planning on them to make an unexpected response. So, but I'm thrilled with a 90% success rate or higher, right? So I'm very careful. So I'll just say it again. My plan is that I think that they will get 100% correct. I'm okay with an error. Okay, but if I only did 5 reps, 1 error is like 80%. So so that's when numbers do help, because if I do a set of 5 and they got 1 wrong, I don't think the 4 reinforcers that they do have is robust enough to make it harder the next time. But if I did 10 reps and they got 1 wrong, that's a 90% success rate. I think 9 reinforcers, it might be robust enough to increase the criteria. So yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we are teaching them how to feel. We're trying our best to set things up that we're pretty sure that they know the answer. Okay, but it's going to happen. In that moment, I don't really have any super strong opinions on how you react to the unexpected response, except obviously I don't want you to react in a punitive and aversive and just grumpy way, right? But I think none of us here are thinking that. But that also does mean that disappoint, the sigh, the shoulders, the things that we might be responding to our own handling, we have to be very careful that isn't trickling down the leash to the dog. So I do care that your reaction is not negative, is not emotionally negative, okay? Because the dog knows the difference. Dogs know when you're faking it. So I also don't want you to be, oh, that was okay. It was good. It was good. Good boy. I don't want you to do a fake good boy or fake good girl when they make a mistake either, because they know the difference. And soon, your fake good boy or fake good girl, all that turns into is a non-reward marker. I don't care how nice you say it. If you are faking it, they know it. And it just becomes, oh, she used that voice, or he did that, right? They learn the pattern. So the best reaction, in my opinion, is just continuing the loop. Okay. So if we are training something, let's skip to training something known. They've done this before. They've shown success at this before. They just make one simple mistake. I'm just going to keep going in the loop. I'm going to bring them right back around and reset them up and let them have at it again. The only thing that's missing is their reinforcer. So running A-frame training, it's in my brain at the moment. And the lectures that are being released tomorrow is really in my brain. So the dog is sitting, the target is in front of them. The reinforcer is going to be pre-placed in front of the target. So it's dog, target, reinforcer. Handlers in the middle standing next to the target. I release a dog from their stay or their station. I cue the target. The dog hits the target. They get cued to take their reinforcement in front of them. They get, after they eat the reinforcer on the ground, they get recalled back to my side, transported back to the beginning. So that would be the complete loop. Set them up again. I go to my place. I release them from the stay. I cue the target. They miss the target. So I'm not going to cue take reinforcement. I'm going to cue the transport and start them again. No reaction, no oops, no good girl, no good boy, no like just nothing. The absence of the reinforcer will do the talking. And if you've been to an R Plus 2.0 camp that I've hosted, or maybe you've heard Sarah Stremming say it, she says, be the robot. And that's what that means to me, is just be clear, not emotional in it. It's very easy for me. I'm not a very like, oh my God, happy, 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 happy kind of trainer, which I have to like remind students that you're allowed to have a personality when you train, as long as it's your personality, your real personality. I'm not that like, oh my God, you're amazing, doting on my dogs all the time person. So it doesn't come out in my training. So be the robot becomes very easily and natural to me. But that's kind of what that means to me, is that you don't need to interject your feelings while they're learning. I'm much more likely to break out like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, when I'm not training. So in between sessions, or so if I do 5 or 6 reps of the A-frame target and then I'm giving them a break, that's when I'm telling them how great they are and kind of loving on them and praising on them, because then it's just praise. And it's just kind of our relationship. It doesn't have really any big impact on how they learn. I know some dogs really like it, to be loved on and talked to and told they're great. I don't have those dogs, either because those are the dogs that I get, or that's the dog I create because that's who I am. Unknown. But whatever. It works for me. What you have going on works for you. But where I think it helps is that I also don't explode with happiness when they get it right. I also don't sigh or get angry when they get it wrong, right? So it does help. So stop being such a robot. Right. It's a struggle. My best advice is like, I don't know, give some like praise every now and then. I don't know. But I try really hard now. Every 3 or 4 reps, I kind of let loose, have a little dance party, just toss some cookies. But when I'm training, I'm a robot. When I'm handling, I'm a robot. And it has its advantages, right? I'm consistent. Mechanical things are very easy for me to learn and repeat the exact same way over and over and over again. But other things are more difficult. Engagement training is very difficult for me. If the dog doesn't just come with it, it's difficult. So you'll learn to work with it. It'll be fine. the icy pup that I train, Gletta, she loves it. She loves being loved on and petted and doted on, and she loves it. So I can do it for her, but it's exhausting. It takes a lot of effort for me to do it to her. So there you go. So finish the loop. Try to not have some big reaction to what went wrong. I also think that reframing it as it's unexpected. I think the surprised reaction is kind of funny, right? It's more genuinely funny. And I think dogs are going to kind of come in, oh, ha, ha, what was the joke? I must have missed the punchline. Ha, 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 ha. And you could just be surprised and give them a cookie. Is no big deal. Okay? So I think having a genuine reaction of being surprised that it went wrong is going to be better than disappointment or faking that, oh, it was no big deal, even though I'm pissed inside and I don't know what to do next, right? So don't try to fake it. Try to leave your emotions out of it as best you can. We're all human. Some dogs are going to be totally okay with it. And however, if you're here and you're listening to it, you probably have a dog that's not okay with it. Smack doesn't care. He also doesn't care if I don't reward him. He'd just keep doing it to do it. He's a unicorn. Shock cares. So if I were to get upset, she would just be like, well, then do it yourself. It's no big deal. I don't need to do this. If you want it so bad, do it yourself, lady. That's my interpretation of her behavior. And of course, Shrek would be like, well, if you're upset, then why are you doing this? Do we need to talk about this? Because we could go do something that you enjoy. So some dogs are going to care more about how your reaction is, but the least reaction, the better, I think. Okay, so let's back up one step and talk about training something new. I am going to put it out there that if it's new, there is no such thing as wrong. Okay? If it's a brand new behavior to the dog can't know, well, this is what she wants and this is what she doesn't want. They can't know that. So if they're offering something that you don't want to be seeing, you need to set up the context, the antecedent arrangements in a way that doesn't happen. But if you, so like, this is a great one. I'm going to say it's great, and your guys are going to be like, whatever. Cone. Okay. So there, this is also in my head because this happens a lot with Shrek, is he has a nose touch to a vertical target, but he also has a go around a cone. And he will confuse these two all the time. And I'm already seeing it with Torch. He doesn't know anything about nose touching a vertical target, but I'm starting to shade going around the cone and he wants to nose touch it. How can I tell him he's wrong? He doesn't know it's not nose touch. He doesn't know that it's go around. So I have to find the split in where he's moving towards the cone, but before his nose makes that decision to go towards it, right? I actually think he wants to bite it. I don't think he's thinking nose touch thoughts. I think he wants to bite it. But I don't want him to bite the cone either. I want him to just go around the cone. So I have to set that up so that it's most likely that he will move towards going around it rather than going directly at it with his mouth open. That's on me. I can't just stand there and watch him bite the cone either and wait for him to go, that ain't it, better try something else. So when it's something new, there can't be a wrong answer. So then we're back to that expected versus unexpected. The first time he did that, the actual thought in my head was shit. Right? Like, rah, dang. So then I just kind of did a little cookie scatter, thought for a second, and then reset it up so I was rewarding sooner, rewarding more frequently. So I was keeping his motion going around the cone rather than letting him have like free access to the cone. I was marking and rewarding almost every single step he took to try and build up some reinforcement history for not biting it. Because then the next time he sees the cone, he says to himself, well, the last time this cone appeared, walking over here got a lot of cookies, whereas now biting has no reinforcement history involved. Does that make sense? He is a good baby. He is sleeping. Okay. And then we kind of briefly touched on when something is known. So you've already got a behavior established, like the running A-frame target, dog, target, reinforcer. So if they don't give you the behavior that you're looking for, and at this point it's on cue, so the reinforcement history is, a week long. It's on cue. You cue it, the dog does it, they get reinforcement. You cue it, the dog doesn't do it, they just get the next piece of the loop without the reinforcer. They go straight into the transport. And then that's all the information the dog needs. Is I didn't get a cookie, I better go back to the behavior that got me that cookie. Okay? Where it gets a little bit tricky with agility is when we are handling. Okay? So when you are practicing like a sequence, let's just say it's just jumps and tunnels, and the exercise is really about your handling. You have to be genuine even when you get it wrong. This is typically what I see, is that the handler will make a mistake. The handler will know that they made a mistake, and the dog will follow the handling. But the handler is already correcting themselves. And so the dog gets kind of a consequence of, oh, did I do something wrong? Right? Or the handler knows that they did something wrong. Handler knows that they sent the dog off course. And so they offer that fake good girl, good boy, screw up cookie type thing. But it wasn't a mistake. Right? It wasn't a mistake. If you sent the dog off course and the dog went off course, the dog doesn't know that it was off course. So when you give them the screw up cookie, you're telling them that following your handling is a questionable idea. I'll let you guys sit with that for just a moment. I'm going to grab this question. Trying to train new behaviors, but keep getting the default of the sit. Any thoughts on how to change the antecedent or how to build up a new default of stand? So figure out what the cue, what he might be cueing off of. Is it a particular way you stand? Is it a particular way you hold the cookies in your hand? Is it just sitting? You sitting, not him sitting. So think of what the context is in when he sits, and then try to train the default stand with a different context and then apply it to training. So you might have to go really really far back into training a default stand. Issues getting a long nose touch on Edward with him licking my hand, so I've yet to break it down Yeah. And so basically you have, like with something like that, you have to mark the moments where the tongue isn't out, and that can be really hard to split. Lack of action. Okay, so then you just need to build duration on your stand. There might be something in the group. In the group, search standby and see what comes up. Elise, I agree. He is a little white Mal. He is not a Jack Russell Terrier. He lives his life through his teeth. I don't think you guys will be able to see it. Maybe you will. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful, right? I mean, it bled like so much, and it's going to be blue tomorrow. It's terrible. He was gnawing on I was holding him. I was talking to the vet, and he was gnawing on like a biscuit type cookie, and he got to my flesh, and his tooth was in my flesh before I realized his tooth was in my flesh, and it hurt really badly. Really bad. He's getting a lot better. He's really good at targeting a toy now, and I can place my bets. I know when to play with him, and I know when to not play with him. So it's fine, but he's a little Mal, and we know that. But he's a little sleepy white Mal right now, so we're good. Okay. So back to that handling piece. How do we feel about that? About if you make a mistake, but the dog followed your handling, you need to genuinely reward them for following your handling. And to me, I think that's the hardest, because we're already processing our error. And I want you to try and reframe it of, oh my gosh, look how brilliantly my dog followed my handling. Look how great it was. So you have to be genuine about that, or the dog will start questioning whether following you is a good idea or not. And where this comes in, and we talk about it almost every week, where it comes in is that either or training is I will most of the time encourage the student to make that mistake happen again on purpose. So if it's like a left into the tunnel versus the right end, you were aiming for the right end, you messed up and you sent them to the left end. They followed you to the left end. I want you to go to the left end again on purpose, so that you can both in your minds go, okay, this is how I get the left end, and this is how you get reinforced for it. And then you're going to practice how are you going to change your handling to affect the dog's line to get them into the right side of the tunnel. Does that make sense? Because now you're training both of you at this point. And if you can control the wrong thing, you can control the right thing. Giving them a screw-up cookie for going off course when you sent them off course is reinforcing following questionable handling. So what I mean by screw-up cookie is that I don't think it's genuine. So if your screw-up cookie is genuine, like the same level of happy you'll be when you get it right, it's no problem. My definition of screw-up cookie is handing them a cookie kind of half-heartedly while you're already talking to the instructor about how to make it better. Or you're sighing at yourself and telling yourself everything that you did wrong while you give them a cookie. So it's just different, right? And I think everyone knows what I mean, but let me know if I've lost you completely. Right. It's hard to be genuine. This is what this comment is saying. It's hard to be genuine and reward the dog for following your handling when your handling was not what you wanted it to be. But we have to get there. That is what will make them question your handling. Be like, well, the last time I followed her handling, she wasn't very happy. So maybe I should do something else. Or what they'll do is they'll go to the right end of the tunnel no matter what you do. Right? Have you run into that? Like You try so hard so many times to get them into the right side of the tunnel that when you try to get them to go to the left, they won't do it because they're like, nope, she wants the right end of the tunnel, and that's the only one I'm doing now. So they try really hard to keep you on your good side if you have these more emotional reactions to the mistakes. What about cueing something they know well and then giving a cookie? I mean, it's better than sighing and being upset. I'll give you that. But why does the dog only get rewarded when you get it right? That's the question, like the genuine reward. That's the question we're getting at. Is that when you get the sequence right, and of course, when you get the sequence right, your dog will get the sequence right. It is different. It's a different reaction and a different reward procedure than when you get it wrong, but the dog got it right. It just feels different. And I want those two to feel the same because from the dog's perspective, it's the same. He followed the handling. He followed the handling. But this time when I followed the handling, I got a nose touch and a piece of kibble. And this time when I followed the handling, I got steak. It's confusing, I think. Do you consider reinforcing participation when in handling mode versus accuracy, or prefer the split of human practices without the dog so the dog doesn't have to have screw? So my preference would be that the handling is at a high level of fluency before I ever get the dog out so that there is a less chance of screw up cookies, right? My entire curriculum is kind of built around that the handler mechanics are what we practice first. So yeah, that would be my preference, is that we spend 2 years learning how to be a very fluent handler before we ever got a dog. Right? It doesn't work that way. Right? That's my dream, my fantasy, that I train handlers before they ever even get their dog. Right? I know. Weird. It's not going to happen. If I had like a kennel and I could have just like a kennel of school dogs, I could probably market it that way. Come learn to be an agility handler and practice with my dogs. And then when you're ready, you can buy the dog you think you want and you can train that dog and it'll be great. That's a fantasy, right? However, so if I am practicing, to answer your question for real, Elise, is that, yeah, I'm going to just pay that dog constantly for hanging in there with me while I learn. I try to make that payment as genuine and as the same as possible, because 99% of the time in handling, the dog is right. And that's also where either or training will help you determine if the dog is following the handling, or if your handling is not adequate, or if the dog is just guessing. Because most of the time, the dog is following the handling, but sometimes we just don't see where they're following the handling in that moment. All right, so I'm grabbing the comments. I've improved on this a lot, but there's still moments I struggle. Thank you for covering this. You're welcome. It's always a work in progress. And come on, I am not perfect at this. If I'm out there doing a handling sequence and I'm not getting it right away, it's super frustrating. The difference is that I now know, like the biggest thing is now I know that when that starts happening, I need to put the dog away. The dog gets their toy, they get to just go be a dog, and I have to work it out on my own. And kind of be frustrated with myself by myself, because I can handle my frustration. I can look at it logically. I can process it. I can fix my mistakes. I can ask for help in English and move on. I don't need to put the dog through that. I don't need to bring the dog through my therapy and fix it with the dog next to me. So then I don't have to like pay the dog for participating in my learning, I can bring the dog back in and pay the dog for doing what I need the dog to do. So if we're working a harder weave pull entry and they get off course, change the picture to get success, then increase difficulty. If you're in training and they miss it one time, I'm probably going to re-ask the exact same question just to see. Did I maybe do something weird? Did they just make a mistake? Did a bird fly over? You know, something that we both or I didn't perceive. So I'm probably going to ask the exact same question one more time. And then if it's still no go, I'm going to break down what I think the problem is. So if I think it's the entry, I'm either going to maybe take that same entry with less speed or less distance to it, something. So I'm going to try and break down what I think the problem is, maybe reinforce just the entry, and then see if I can put it back into the chain. Okay, perfect, Elise. Why does the dog only get rewarded when you get it right is the question of the year. Always working on this, and this is going on a Post-it. Sweet. Read it on your way in, read it on your way out. But that's like one of my things is that if they're following the handling, they're following the handling. I don't care if you didn't do what you set out to do. Okay, so whether it's something like an obstacle or handling, I'm going to give it about 2 goes. Okay, and if it's my handling and I know it's my handling that needs fixed, I'm going to give myself 2 opportunities. I'm going to reinforce my dog for following my handling both times as genuinely as I can. And if it's still not if I'm still not getting it, I need to put the dog away and break it down for myself and then bring the dog back in when I'm ready. And if it's an obstacle skill, just like I answered a minute ago, I'm going to break it down, take it out of the sequence, figure out what needs more reinforcement, and try and build from there. If you can't pivot like that in the middle of a training session without putting the dog away, without having a think, without phoning a friend, you need to do it. I know it's annoying when you've driven somewhere and you're renting a place and you went to train this and it's not going well. My advice there is to have a list of like 6 or 10 things you could train, so that if you start training one and you find yourself digging a ditch, you just step out of the ditch and you go to this other area and train something else. Okay, so that's my advice there before that question comes up. And then when you're practicing, now we're going to kind of just pivot briefly. I kind of sped up there because I looked at the clock. We're going to pivot just a little bit to competition. Okay. And this is when we are stringing, we're doing longer sequences, coursework, things like that. So this can apply to training or competition, right? So you're running longer sequences and courses. Your longer sequences and courses should be known things pushed together. Okay. Meaning if your dog doesn't know how to do the teeter, you shouldn't be sequencing the teeter, right? Or if your dog has never done a blind cross at the end of the teeter, your dog's first trial is not a good time to show the dog something like that, right? So when we're working on coursework, whether it's in training or competition, we want to make sure that the elements of that course are things that they know, or things that you think they know. They are allowed to make mistakes, right? They're allowed to tell you, I actually don't know that. Not in this context. That's allowed. So, but when I get to that point, I now need to react the way I'm going to react in a trial. Okay. So that depends on if you are going to use fix and go now that we have that, if you're going to ignore it like we mostly do, if we're going to remove the dog from the ring for it. Those two things need to match. Okay, because if you react in training one way and you react in trialing another way, you're going to end up with two different sets of cues, right? Okay, so this is where I am a little bit careful about repeating things, because I don't want the dog to learn that they can just do it again and get it right on the second time and then go on. But I'm also really aware that I need to practice coming back and reattempting something in training, because that might be what I do in a trial. If I get a if the dog runs by the jump, I might just circle back around and have them take the jump, and so I can keep going. But if in training I stop and reward where the dog ran around the jump, or if I stop and call the dog back to me and give him a cookie, blah, 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 everything we just talked about, those two things are different. And then the dog starts having a different experience in agility at those two different places. And grab this comment. Had a day where it just wasn't going well. Yep, I think that's kind of perfect. If the dog is like, I don't know, not feeling it right now, then the best thing to do is give them a break and give them another shot at it later. It's always super helpful when you have multiple dogs. Because then if it's not going well, you can just, okay, have a little nap. I'll train the other one and we'll try again in a minute. Okay. This is all to say that, so we try to practice our competition habits in training so that we can trial like we train and train like we trial, and so that those behaviors and those cues can stay as consistent as we can, right? That's going to help with dogs getting ring wise and things like that. But all of this to say how we react to an unexpected response. I still want to be like, it's more about how it all goes back to planning those training sessions. That even if you did react poorly to a mistake, if it's only happening once out of every 5 training sessions, I doubt it's going to have much of an impact on your learner. But if it's happening 2 or 3 times every single training session, it's going to have a bigger impact on your learner. Does that make sense? So it still comes back to how you set up the training session. So if it doesn't, it does matter how you react, but even if you react poorly, it's going to be okay. As long as you're looking at it going, okay, well, that session I had 2 unexpected responses. How am I going to set up the next training session where I have none? Because I really want to focus on putting a reinforcement history around the correct response and things like that. All right. Question time. Go. Anything? It got quiet. Okay. If you think of another question after listening to it again, going back, maybe listening to the beginning if you missed part of it, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a question, just post it in the group. I'll try and answer it. Search the group for other things that I've done on this topic, and see if other questions come up for you. So I'll just kind of quickly recap, and if someone pops a question in there, I'll answer it. That one, it's not the learner's job to set themselves up. They don't perceive it as right or wrong. They perceive it as this got a cookie and this didn't get a cookie. This got reinforced, this didn't get reinforced. When you're training, you're teaching them also how to feel about training. You're teaching them how to feel about that reinforcer. You're teaching them how to feel about how they feel about that location. You're teaching them how to feel about you. You're teaching them how to feel about training with you and things like that. And so when you're training something new, there are no wrong answers. When you're training something known, your best way forward is to just try and keep the loops really clean, either reinforce or do not reinforce. Remember that in handling, try to be as genuine as possible. And remember, why do they only get rewarded when you get it right? So try really hard that following the handling is following the handling, even if the handling wasn't what you wanted it to be. And remember to show the dog what it's going to be like running courses in competition. If you're going to have them redo an obstacle, they need to see that in training. And they need to see that without reinforcers on you in training. Okay, so trying to keep everything as consistent as possible is going to help you in the long run. Okay, awesome. And I need a topic for next week. So let me know what you think we should talk about next week as well. What about a different value cookie as well? One for one we want and one if a failure. Absolutely. It's a completely okay response. Again, I think you could give the high value cookie for every single response. Like if we're talking, well, anything, I think you could give the high value cookie for every response and still get a really solid end result because of that last bullet point. If it's happening once every few sessions that they get steak for the wrong thing, it's no big deal. But if it's happening 2 or 3 times out of 10 that they're getting steak for the wrong thing, well, you're going to see more of the wrong thing. The bigger question is not what do I do when I get an unexpected response? The bigger question is how do I not get unexpected responses? But absolutely, I do that quite a lot, is to reward. It's very similar to just getting the transport cookie versus the cookie in the bowl and the transport cookie, because maybe the cookie in the bowl is higher value than what I use for my transports, right? So something like that absolutely is a great way about it. And it's information. And if it helps keep things more neutral for you, that's the strategy I would use. Question for future talk. Teaching agility to others. Do you have good tips for helping students? Oh, that's right. I did want to do kind of a series surrounding teaching. So that is a good point. Maybe we start that. Yeah, I do have some ideas. So yeah, maybe I'll start kind of the topics surrounding teaching agility and teaching others. That's a good idea. Thank you for that reminder. All right. That's that. If you come up with any more questions, just post them in the group. Thanks for joining me this evening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.